How can the Denver Nuggets beat the Los Angeles Clippers in their round one matchup of the 2025 NBA playoffs? We're going to go through that answer right here on the Mile High Hoops podcast with me, Jake Shapiro, and him, Anilo Piro. This series is basically a pick'em right now. If you look at Vegas odds, if you look across the board, a lot of people, actually, the ESPN experts, are leaning towards the Los Angeles Clippers. The Denver Nuggets, however, are hosting this series, and it's in Denver on Saturday night. AP, what are your just initial reactions to having the Clippers come in here? Do you feel like the Nuggets can win this series? Is this going to be a tougher series compared to what we've seen the last few years? Kind of where are you feeling?
I like the Nuggets in the series. I'll come out and say that off the rip here, but I do think it's going to be a hard-fought series. I think this has 6 or 7 games written all over it just because I have a lot of respect for the Clippers. James Harden, since being traded to L.A., has gone through a little bit of a renaissance. Kawhi Leonard is back, and I understand that his tenure with the Clippers has been a bit up and down, but when Kawhi Leonard is healthy, I still think he's one of the most impactful players in the NBA, and he is healthy right now. Norman Powell crushed the Nuggets in a game earlier this season. Zubac, has continued to evolve before our eyes. So it's not going to be an easy outlook. I know the Lakers last season was fun in round one. It was fun the year before in the Western Conference Finals, but this ain't the Lakers. This is the Clippers, and they're playing good basketball right now. Winners, I want to say, of 9 of their last 10 in the regular season as well, with some good wins. Beat the Warriors, beat the Kings, beat the Rockets, beat Dallas twice, and so we'll see how this matchup shakes out. But Nuggets got the best player in the world, playoff Jamal, MPJ, wake up. We'll see what happens.
So the Clippers were 18-6 in their last 24 games. Kawhi played 20 of those 24 games, so it was a stretch of mostly healthy Kawhi games. He only played 36 on the season. That's kind of why I'm looking at this microscopic view of where Kawhi was actually playing, because that's what we expect, right? In the last 15 games of the season, the Clippers had the best net rating in the NBA. They were plus 15 points over 100 possessions. The Nuggets during that stretch were 18th in the NBA with a plus 1 net. Now, generally speaking, the second half of the NBA season, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on with matchups and what have you. So you can't necessarily always read something in to the second half of a season in a team's statistics. However, every single one of the last couple of years, there's been a team that has gotten extremely hot and gotten to the conference finals in the second half of the season. The Dallas Mavericks last year after remaking their team, the Los Angeles Lakers when the Denver Nuggets ran into them. Even if you go back to the Portland Trail Blazers when the Nuggets ran into them in 2019. These are teams that got hot in the second half of the season, kind of turned it around. Atlanta, when they played Milwaukee in the conference finals. So this has happened time and time again. So are the Clippers one of those teams that has really found something and found themselves in the second half of the season? Or are they one of those teams that's like, they just kind of ran into some weird scheduling and all season long they were up and down. They're really just an up and down team.
No, I think they're, they are certainly an up and down team. But much like you kind of alluded to with, the sample size with Kawhi, I think you can counter that with the Nuggets and their starting 5. But to kind of answer your question, I think this Clipper team is legit, man. Just looking at some of their wins, later on in the season, the second half, they beat the Knicks 105-95. They took down the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, 132-119. Beat up on Memphis, beat the Knicks a second time, played the Cavs close a second time, right? Dallas, as I alluded to as well. So I don't think
Brunson played in either of those Knicks games, is
fair.
What I would tell you. And on top of that, the Cleveland win, one of the more impressive wins of the NBA season because Cleveland was trying, also happened in the stretch where Cleveland was playing their worst basketball of the season.
That's a good point.
So I think, yes, I agree with you. They've beaten some bigger names than the Denver Nuggets have recently. No doubt about that. But I think there's a caveat on it.
Yeah, and I just have PTSD from the Nuggets' losses to the Knicks and Cavaliers this season. So I think that's why I kind of
they were
look
bad.
at it. Yeah, it was terrible. I think back to that home game against Cleveland. I was up in the press box like, my mind is melting. Like, what was going on in that game? But point being, I think this is a much more refined Clippers team than we've seen in years past. No playoff P. Right? Paul George no longer on the Clippers as well. So do they lift that curse there a little bit too? But I go back to the point that I just made. With James Harden, a little bit of this renaissance, better player right now than he was in Philly, right? Obviously not what he was in Houston, but still a very effective player. And I've always been a Kawhi guy. And is this the first real playoff run where Kawhi's been healthy since the bubble?
Yeah.
Hey, touche.
He jumped out of there because they had that run where they played the Jazz in the conference finals, and he gets hurt in the series before. And Paul George and Reggie Jackson actually had a huge series against the Jazz. Or maybe that was the second round, and then they got to the conference finals after that. But Kawhi didn't play 8 of those playoff games that year. So Kawhi's only played in 4 playoff games total the last several years. The last time he played when the night the Clippers were eliminated from the playoffs was the bubble, the 3-1 Nuggets comeback. So the last 2 times Kawhi's been healthy for a playoff run all the way through was the bubble Nuggets and the 2019 Raptors.
Yeah.
That's a while.
And I feel like not that Kawhi's been forgotten, but think back, and I know he's not with Toronto anymore. But at that point in his career, he's the best player in the league. Him, Steph, Kevin Durant, kind of pick your poison. But at one point, Kawhi Leonard had a legitimate argument, as did James Harden, to be the best player in the NBA. And I understand they're not quite shells of themselves, but they're still pretty close to that version.
Okay, and I'd make this argument that Kawhi Leonard's career the last 10 years might be the biggest what if of the last 10 years
100%.
if he stays healthy. So the win shares per 48, which basically is just a counting stat of what you do on the court over your 48 minutes. Nikola Jokic is the best player in NBA history according to this. Adds the most value to your team per minute in NBA history. 14th is Kawhi Leonard. 16th is James Harden. Kawhi is, when he was on, was one of the best players in the league.
Dominant.
And James Harden is still very good. I think Kawhi Leonard matches up really well with Aaron Gordon. So I think Kawhi is going to do whatever Kawhi is going to do, and Aaron Gordon's going to slow him a little bit. But that's ultimately not where the series is going to be won or lost. And I thought David Adelman was spot on today when he said, yeah, Shaq and Kobe, they were awesome, but it was Derek Fisher who beat the Rockers. It was those guys who could hit shots on the ancillary that make the difference, and that's why I come back to some of the other parts of this matchup, why I think they are going to be big.
Yeah, and I was on with Dover and Cecil earlier this week, and they were kind of getting my opinion of this series, and I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head, Jake. Kawhi's going to do Kawhi, James Harden's going to do James Harden, right? You want to try to neutralize those guys. But
I don't know that Harden's going to be Harden. And that's where I go back and forth because I think the X factor in the series is Christian Brown. And I think Christian Brown is the X factor because he can actually slow James Harden. In Harden, I don't think people realize how good he still is just because of the bad talk in Philadelphia and in Brooklyn. He was 20th in the league in scoring this year, 5th in assists, and he was top 10 in steals as well. Averaged 22 a game, shot 41% and only 35% from 3, so the numbers are down. And you're going, well, he doesn't shoot as many threes, and he doesn't get to the free throw line as much as he used to. He's still shooting 9 threes a game and getting to the free throw line 8 times a game. He is a serious threat. He drew some of the most shooting fouls out of any guard in the NBA this year. Christian Brown, a lot of shooting fouls. So there are some problems, but ultimately, James Harden was slowed by the Nuggets in a couple of the games they matched up with this year. So Harden's one I'm not putting in pen saying that's what he's going to do every night. I'm putting it in pencil because I think Christian Brown can change the series there. But to your overall point, I ultimately do think the guys like Norm Powell and Chris Dunn are going to decide the series.
100%. And that's the point being that Denver is going to do what they can to limit James Harden and limit Kawhi Leonard. And then you talk about Chris Dunn, a guy that Denver potentially could have had this past offseason. Conversation for another day. But Norman Powell, a guy that this season in particular has absolutely cooked the Denver Nuggets. I mean, he put up, 37, 28, 16, and 30 in the 4 times that they've played in 2024 and 2025. And then you've got Zubac as well, who has really blossomed. He was actually pretty good from what I remember in that bubble series against Nikola Jokic. He was just a very young player. And obviously he's in his prime now, so he's much better. And so the point being, Denver's going to try to slow down James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, and it's going to be up to the Norman Powells and the Zubac's and the Chris Dunns of the world to make the difference for Los Angeles.
So Norman Powell was awesome in the first half of the season, could have been an all-star player. And Christian Brown was still trying to figure out his sea legs on defense and how to manage playing a full night with offense and defense. Since the all-star break, Norman Powell has only scored 25 or more in a game twice. And granted, Kawhi Leonard's come in, so that's kind of eaten into his shot attempts a little bit. But there is truth to the fact that Norman Powell has gotten worse throughout the course of the season, and Christian Brown has gotten better on defense. So I'm not as worried about Norman Powell as I would be if you asked me about Norman Powell against the Nuggets in a playoff series in January. But I do think he's a bigger threat than people will want to talk about. To me, the biggest threat is Ivica Zubac. He's the Clippers' best player. Legitimately, he's the Clippers' best player right now. And granted, maybe he's not the best per minute, but how much he played this year, what he gave them, he's going to be an all-NBA team player, or he should be, and whoever doesn't vote him is wrong. He only had 2 games in the second half of the season where he didn't have a double-double, AP.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to downplay him. Like Jokic, you're used to the triple-double every game. He's a little like Jokic Jr. in that way. Just a very, very solid fundamental player, too.
Well, it goes to show you how good Jokic is because he's on
another planet. He's
obviously.
an alien.
He doesn't have the assist thing that Jokic has. He doesn't have the passing abilities, but he hits the glass as hard as Jokic. And Ivica Zubac hitting the glass has led the Clippers to the best rebounding team in the league. They have more rebounds than anyone else. Ivica Zubac had the best defensive rebounding percentage in the league, and Nikola Jokic and Ivica Zubac are 4th and 5th in second chance points this year. They're really close in offensive rebounds per game as well. These are 2 of the best rebounders in the league, and to me, this series could be won or lost on rebounding. You look at what the Nuggets did in games this year where they won the rebounding battle by 5 or more boards, which is kind of, they've made a noticeable difference, right? 25-9 when they controlled the glass by +5 or more this season. The Clippers, when they lost the board of the battle of the boards by 5 or more, 5-11. So if the Nuggets can simply get 5 more rebounds a game than the Clippers, they can win this in 5.
Yeah, and here's the other thought to kind of run with your rebounding dynamic, right? So you've got Jokic and you've got Gordon, right? And not that they'll cancel each other out, but you've got Kawhi and Zubac down there. And the one trademark and kind of the thing you can hang your hat on with the Nuggets as a signature when they win these games is their ability to get out and run. I think fast break points, stretching the floor, and you mentioned it in a video and in your preview that you did for us at denversports.com, you need to get Zubac out of the paint. The more that you can stretch this Clippers defense thin, the better opportunity Denver's going to have to try to run up this score.
Yeah, I'm with you. DA is with you. He talked about it today. He said, one of the things about Zubac, he's a great player, but he's a little bit slower, and we need to keep our transition scoring alive. It's something that the Nuggets did in their championship season. They scored about the same amount of points in transition in the regular season as they did in the 2023 playoffs. I don't think they're going to replicate that number in this season because they've been so good in transition. But Christian Brown cutting, Christian Brown getting out in transition will be huge, as well as Aaron Gordon's athleticism against Kawhi. He's one of the only players that can physically match Kawhi, and that will be very big for the Nuggets. And then, and the Nuggets have gotten a little smaller without KCP, but Michael Porter Jr. being your 3, the Nuggets have 2 forwards on the floor. The Clippers have 3 guards. They're going to have a significant size advantage with Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon, depending on who the Clippers put Kawhi on. And then I think if you look at it, so that means Norm Powell or James Harden's guarding Christian Brown. All day backdoor cuts. Secondarily, you're going to have Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon overpowering that secondary forward, which is probably going to be James Harden. And then you can decide, let's say Kawhi is on Michael Porter Jr. Let's say they make that call. You can literally sit MPJ in the corner all game and keep Kawhi out of the plays. So instead of a series like the Nuggets where they've struggled against the Suns or maybe would struggle against the Wolves, where, yeah, they have a really good defense, AP, those defenses are proactive. Those defense get into the passing lanes. Those defense are bothersome. They're big. They're rangy. The Clippers don't really have that. They're just really solid and sound. And to me, this is a defense, while very good, is one the Nuggets can pick apart still.
Yeah, and that's where it's going to come down to playoff Jamal being playoff Jamal, right? You got to knock down your shots, and Michael Porter Jr. as well. Like, I put it out on X, Media by AP, if you want to follow me over there, that Denver can't win this series without Jamal Murray doing what he needs to do. But I also think the same thing can be said for Michael Porter Jr. Let's talk about less about the scoring right now, going back to rebounding real quick. There's been a handful of games this year, not quite like Zubac, obviously. Michael Porter Jr. is a double-double threat pretty much every game at times. I mean, I'm looking at his recent game log. Had 12 boards against Memphis. That's with Triple J out there for the Grizzlies as well.
And Edey.
Exactly. And 10 rebounds against Milwaukee. They've got Giannis, right? 10 rebounds
and Brook
against Golden State. And so point being, I know that we all look at Michael Porter Jr. as a legitimate scorer because that's what he is, but he can also really impact this game, going back to Kawhi and Zubac canceling out Jokic and Gordon in the rebounding department with that 3 forwards on the court for Denver compared to 3 guards for Los Angeles.
Yeah, so that to me is, again, one of the biggest parts of the series. You mentioned Jamal Murray. He only shot 51% this year, true shooting percentage, against Chris Dunn, which is horrible. But again, all these games were very early on in the season, and Jamal's been a different player really since the All-Star break. The one thing that is different about this series than for the Nuggets has been true of every series the last 2 years is the Clippers actually have a better four-man lineup than the Nuggets do. When they play with their two stars, Harden and Leonard, and Zubac, as well as Derek Jones Jr. on the floor, they have a plus 15 net rating this season, which is better than any four-man lineup the Nuggets have. So that's a little bit concerning. The Nuggets averaged 31 assists per game this season, which is the highest assist average in NBA history, and 58.5 points of those came in the paint. The points did. That is also the highest since they've been tracking that. Denver will look to get inside and pound the paint. But the Clippers led the league in steals as a team. They're going to be able to get some of those passes. And with the Nuggets being so passing reliant, they're going to need to make sure the Clippers don't get out and run. Another thing to look for with Zubac is he does not get into foul trouble. He stays on the floor. He only fouled out of 2 games this year, and he didn't pick up 5 in any other game. So 77 games, he had 4 fewer fouls. That's really big for the Clippers because their backup is Drew Eubanks, who Nikola Jokic eats alive and has had some pretty funny, hilarious, intimidating moments to Eubanks over the years. Also on the Clippers bench, though, if they decide to go small, is former All-NBA player Ben Simmons, who is a factor, I think, in this series. I'm not sure in what way, positive or negative for the Clippers, but he is a factor.
And he was also like mirroring Jokic. I saw something about that, like in the Clippers practice, like he's trying to play that Jokic type of role. Look, you can't prepare for Nikola Jokic. The Thunder's going to be the Thunder. But, when it's all said and done, it's a compelling matchup, and you look at the recent memory, obviously, bubble seems like forever ago, but, 4 interesting matchups between these two teams this season. And like, I'm so curious to see how it plays out. Cause like I said, to start the show, like I've got Denver winning this series, but I don't think it's going to be easy by any stretch.
Well, and there's also some like emotional factors as well in this series. DeAndre Jordan, who might be the best Clipper ever going against his old team. Russell Westbrook, who's going to be very revved up to go get revenge against the Clippers. Do you know what Russell Westbrook shot in the playoffs last year for the Clippers?
Tell me.
26%.
Oh, great.
Not from 3, from the field.
From the field, yeah. Well, he talked about how he gets to go take his kids to school now that the series is in L.A., so that's a joke. Obviously, that's great that he's able to do that, but, we'll see what happens with Russ.
I don't like revved up Russ.
I mean, isn't there only one version of Russ?
I think there's a version where he gets even more revved up against teams that he feels some sort of personal vendetta against. And those, to me, have been some of his worst games historically thinking. Like when he plays against those former teams, when he has some sort of smack talk thing going on. I think Russ is best when minimized and in control.
In spurts, I think is the best way to say it. And that's up to Adelman.
Yes.
How is David Adelman going to adjust in this series and in these games differently than Michael Malone would? Because we know what Michael Malone would do. Set it and forget it. In regards to his rotations, who's playing here, who's playing there, when am I calling my timeouts, saving the challenges, whatever it might be. So I think that's one of the other minor details. Look, I don't think a David Adelman adjustment will win the Nuggets this series, but it can certainly keep them in some games and help expand some leads.
Well, the funny part about the rotations, when you mentioned with how they will be different from Malone to DA ran the rotations for Malone. So that has been passed down the staff. I'm not saying that DA agreed with them because we've already seen some differences in the Nuggets rotation, but that is, I think, the biggest wild card in this series is the Nuggets have a different coach, and we have no idea how that's going to play out. One of the simplest questions comes back to the rotation is how many deep do the Nuggets go in this series?
I still think it's 7 or 8.
So Russ, Payton.
Well, I guess if you throw in Strother.
You think Strother's playing in the series?
Know. I'm playing Pickett over Strother personally.
So that's 8 with Pickett.
But, yeah, so probably 8.
I think
maybe fringe 9.
I think we're going to get 5 minutes of DJ a game, basically. I think we're gonna get 7 minutes of it one night when the Nuggets are in foul trouble. I think we're gonna get DJ for a 2 minute at the end of the first quarter in one game. So I think DJ's probably gonna play 20, 30 total minutes in this series. But it's not gonna be the same type of rotation as everyone else. Right. I think Pickett will probably play 8 to 9 minutes. Maybe Strother, depending on how the series goes later. You swap those minutes out.
If they need shooting, if they're down, probably Strother. But if they're up, it's probably Pickett.
My bold take for you is if Peyton Watson gets the sixth most amount of minutes for the Nuggets. If Peyton Watson is the Nuggets' 6th man in this series, they're going to win. If Russell Westbrook is the 6th man in this series, the Nuggets are going to lose.
I could buy that.
Yep.
And, speaking of emotional factors, Peyton Watson, LA kid, went to UCLA, right? So it's going to be a little bit of a homecoming here for him as well. So how are the emotions? Peyton Watson, not just in this series, but however far Denver goes in this postseason and frankly beyond, he's going to be a part of this team, right? He's going to play a critical role, I think, in the success or failure of them this postseason.
Yeah, and he's going to need a little spurt on probably not only Kawhi Leonard, but James Harden. He's going to need to get in actions. They're going to need to throw different coverages at him. I thought DA was pretty interesting yesterday when he talked about how Harden's like a drop-back quarterback at this point in his career, like a Peyton Manning. I mean, he's right.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, he doesn't have the athleticism maybe that he used to, but he still can make all the correct reads, and that's part of the reason why Zubac has been so good. It's Harden has set him up. Speaking of coaches, the coach the Nuggets had before Michael Malone, Brian Shaw, is on the Clippers bench in this series,
Old pal.
as well as Dante Jones, former Nuggets shooting guard, who left the Pacers, and of course that was the straw that broke the camel's back with Carmelo Anthony leaving the Denver Nuggets eventually. So a lot of connections between these two teams. The first ever Clippers playoff series win after leaving Buffalo was against the Nuggets in 2006 with Coutinho Mobley and Elton Brand. Never forget. James Harden played the Nuggets in a playoff series way back when. That was the Ty Lawson team that Danilo Gallinari got hurt and they got, wrecked 4-1 in that playoff series. So a lot has changed between these two teams since they've both matched up and the individual parties have crossed up. But one thing hasn't. Bogdan Bogdanovic is still Nikola Jokic's best friend, and he's over there and probably saying some things in Serbian to get in his head.
Yeah. And he's not going to play no Andre Iguodala type role like he did for the Warriors back then. That's going to be a fun matchup. And
I mean, he's 10 a game off the bench at least.
No, he is. He is. And another interesting kind of history dynamic? Denver will be, along with the Clippers, obviously, the first team to christen Intuit Dome for a playoff series as well. First time out of Staples Center, first playoff series for the Clippers in their new building. I mean, there's a lot of juice in this series, man. I'm excited. And I think James Harden and Kawhi, I understand that the basketball players are, it's not the same as football in regards to the rah-rah aspect of it, but they feel like they have something to prove. And when they're playing this good of basketball, the intensity and the desire and the belief probably goes up exponentially for those guys.
I think the Clippers are hungrier than the Nuggets, and that is a bad spot to be in.
I don't disagree with that at all, actually.
Yeah, I think Ty Lue has a lot to prove. I think Kawhi Leonard, now healthy, is trying to prove something. He is a absolute alien on the court when he is healthy. I think James Harden has years and years of tour dates jokes to overcome and try to prove how good he's been in the NBA, which truly he's been one of the best shooting guards in NBA history, just hasn't played out in the playoffs. Harden's only won, I think, 3 or 4 playoff series since that Rockets blow up where they'll miss 27 shots in a row against the Warriors. And all of those playoff series wins have been in the first round except for the Brooklyn run that got derailed by Kevin Durant's foot being a half inch too big. So there's a lot of NBA history wrapped up in this series. And ultimately, it's going to be the bow on whatever happens with Nikola Jokic's season. And I think Jokic has not anything to lose per se in this series, but he can put a giant legacy staple if he's able to win this series and make a run, because it's Nikola Jokic led his team to 50 wins in a season they fired their coach and GM because the roster stunk and the GM and the coach were fighting. And look, he got the team to the Western Conference Finals that year, or whatever it might be. I think this is a huge Jokic legacy potential series.
If it goes well, yes. I don't think his legacy will be hurt if they get bounced in this first round. I just think, for everything you just alluded to, not that they're excuses, but they're factors, right? But if they are able to go on a run, I think 100% this will go a long way in building up the legacy of Nikola Jokic. So give me your prediction. Talk to me. Nuggets win in this series? If so, Nuggets win in blank. Talk to me.
You want me to do it?
Do it. Or Clippers win in blank.
Nuggets in 4. I will never go against this. After Suns in 4 guy, in my head permanently, I will never not pick the Nuggets in 4.
Wow. Nuggets in 4.
Nuggets in 4.
You just talked about Zubac and Norman Powell.
You know what I learned about in the 2023 playoffs, Anilo, when I kept saying Nuggets in 4? Everyone said, well, these teams stink. The Nuggets are rolling them. So now what I do is I talk up these teams, talk about how good they are, but you know what? The Denver Nuggets are better, and they're going to beat them in 4 games.
You build them up to tear them down.
Yeah.
I respect it. I'm going Nuggets in 7. Because I just subscribe to Nug Life, and it would not surprise me whatsoever if Denver drops game 1 on their home court. They just never like to make it easy on themselves. They did in the championship season. Championship season, what they lose? 4 playoff games the whole time, right? That was a breeze for them. This is not the championship team of 2 years ago. So I'm going Nuggets in 7. I've got a lot of respect for the Los Angeles Clippers, but I do like Denver to win the series.
Give me your 3 worst playoff players of the last 5-10 years.
In general?
Yeah, like just that come to your mind. 3 worst playoff players in the NBA. Like that have like a big impact,
Yeah, Paul George, of course, is the initial one that comes to mind. Oh, I mean, I'm trying to think who else is faded in big games. Rudy Gobert's had a couple of interesting matchups as well. I'm trying to think if there's some big one.
Okay.
Paul George for sure is the first one that comes to mind.
So I'd go top 5. I'd put Rudy. I'd put Paul. I'd put Julius Randle in there. And the other 2 I'd put in there are both in this series, Russell Westbrook and Ben Simmons.
Fair.
So they might neutralize each other.
Cancel each other out. What's that old math equations you used to do in grade school?
I don't know. I can't do math.
Order
We
of
started talking about math.
operations?
I'm going to wrap the podcast because I'm not getting into this conversation. He's AP. I'm Jake Shapiro. Follow us every single night after the game. We're going to be going live Saturday night, or I guess it's Saturday afternoon. It's a little earlier.
Evening-ish.
Some of these games are very late, but after every single game, we're going to be doing the Mile High Hoops podcast post game. So we'll be doing that live. Make sure you like and subscribe, comment, do all that stuff so you can participate in the conversation. On top of that, we will also be doing our normal Tuesday, Thursday podcast. So there's a lot of Mile High Hoops podcasts coming, and there's a lot of Denver Nuggets content coming on denversports.com. Make sure you're following along. Thanks for tuning in.